I am 75 years old tonight, and in 3/4 of a century, I have never witnessed what just happened behind the walls of Buckingham Palace. Within the last 24 hours, King Charles has signed a document so devastating, it has effectively ended the monarchy as we know it. Without warning, Queen Camilla's inheritance rights have been entirely, ruthlessly revoked. The execution happened in complete secrecy, away from the press, away from the public, away from the light. Yet the shockwave is already rattling the ancient foundations of the realm. Right now, a terrifying rumor is spreading through the palace corridors regarding an unusual glowing crimson seal on a highly classified file. A file detailing the deepest financial secrets of the House of Windsor. Documents so toxic, even the king's primary advisors are barred from viewing them. But days ago, Camilla made a fatal error. She accidentally whispered something that proved she had penetrated the vault. Now, a suffocating silence has gripped the royal household. Staff members refuse to make eye contact. Conversations vanish into thin air the moment a door opens. Was it an innocent slip of the tongue, or the opening salvo in a cold-blooded betrayal? Deep within the reinforced chambers of the Privy Council, an ancient oak table, stained with centuries of royal blood and dark secrets, stands as the altar for a royal execution. King Charles III sits at the apex. His spine is rigid, unyielding, but the crushing burden on his soul is unmistakable. "The choice is made," Charles announces. His voice doesn't just fill the room, it cuts through the absolute silence like a razor blade. Queen Camilla is hereby stripped, permanently, of all inheritance rights tied to the crown estate. Effective immediately, her signature is worthless. Her name is erased from every testament, will, and ledger belonging to this family. Charles stops. His piercing blue eyes slowly lock onto every face in the room, watching the raw panic, disbelief, and forced submission ripple across his council. "This is not open for debate," the king whispers, his tone dangerously calm. "Every asset, every palace, every dollar currently under her control will undergo immediate seizure. I want a full asset lock before the weekend." The air in the room turns to ice. In the dark corner of the chamber stands Sir Michael Reynolds, the chief security advisor. His gaze never wavers from the monarch. In this exact room, he is the only man alive who knows the true depths of the horror that has just occurred. Michael gives a fraction of a nod, a silent signal to the king. The trap is locked. The targets are surrounded. Hours later, BBC programming doesn't just stop, it vanishes. A stark black screen is replaced by an anchor whose hands are visibly shaking as he reads the emergency bulletin. In an unprecedented act of royal fury, the king has severed Queen Camilla from the royal lineage. Palace deep-throats leak a terrifying detail. The queen has been caught in a high-stakes criminal conspiracy to forge the king's own signature on state documents. Across Great Britain, the collective gasp is deafening. At Raynal House, Camilla sits completely frozen in front of the television, the blue light washing over her pale face. She doesn't scream. She doesn't weep. Instead, her mind flashes back to the decades she spent manipulating her way to the top, remembering how Charles used to look at her with absolute blind devotion. Now, that gaze has turned into pure murderous execution. She reaches for her phone to call him, to leverage the secrets she still holds. But she stops. The realization hits her like a physical blow. She has lost. Not because she wasn't clever, but because she completely underestimated the monster the crown makes out of a man. outside the heavy iron palace gates, a feeding frenzy has begun. Millions of flashbulbs blind the dark. Hundreds of reporters are screaming, their voices blending into a chaotic roar. But Charles will not step out. The execution was done in the dark, and the dark is where the truth will stay. Because this nightmare didn't start yesterday. It began 7 days ago. 1 week ago, as twilight bled into darkness over Windsor Castle, King Charles III sat behind locked doors with Prince William. Resting on the mahogany desk between them was a heavy, black leather dossier bound in steel chains. Stamped across the front in burning red ink were the words, "Crown Estate, Top Secret." "I am passing total governance of Norfolk Estate to you tonight, William," Charles muttered, his voice gravelly, laced with an agonizing fatigue. He pushed the heavy briefcase toward his heir. "This isn't just land, William. This is our bloodline. It is the vault. It is the sacred promise that ensures our survival. It must never fall into outside hands, ever." "I understand, Father," William replied, his voice dropping an octave as he gripped the steel case. "I will guard it with my life." Without a single drop of hesitation, Charles penned his sweeping signature onto the legal parchment. The dossier was immediately slammed shut, and boiling crimson wax was poured over the seam, the heavy royal signet ring pressed violently into the seal. Chief Administrator James Hargrove entered the room like a ghost. He locked the files in a reinforced titanium case, entered a rolling biometric passcode, and escorted it under heavy guard to a waiting armored convoy. Its destination? Whitehall. The legal mechanism was automatic. Within 72 hours, the digital transfer would lock, making William the sole custodian of the empire's greatest wealth. Standing by the high glass window, Charles watched the taillights of the convoy bleed into the fog. What the king did not see was that his very own signature had just lit the fuse on an explosion that would tear his family apart. William placed a heavy hand on his father's shoulder. "It's safe now, Father." But they were wrong, because watching from the pitch-black shadows of Clarence House, a predator was waiting. Queen Camilla sat alone in her private drawing room, the flickering light of a crystal chandelier dancing in the dark amber whiskey in her glass. She was wrapped in a midnight black silk gown, her hair perfectly coiffed, her eyes burning with an intense, ruthless calculation. Standing in front of her was a shadow operative, a man whose face was completely obscured by the darkness. His voice was a clinical whisper. "Your Majesty, I have the operational blueprint, the Norfolk transport route, M25 motorway, departure precisely at 1400 tomorrow. It's a dual-guard tactical transport. The biometric codes scramble every 60 minutes. Camilla took a slow, deliberate sip of her drink, her lips curling into a lethal, freezing smile. "Flawless," she breathed. "Bring out the counterfeit portfolio. My name must replace William's on the primary deed. I want the parchment identical, the signature indistinguishable, the wax seal perfect. If there is a single microscopic error, you will pay for it with your life." The man bowed into the dark and vanished. Camilla's play wasn't just about greed, it was about survival. She knew the brutal math of the monarchy. The moment Charles takes his last breath, she is reduced to a historical footnote, a royal widow with zero authority, zero funding, and zero assets. The Crown Estate would bypass her entirely. But if her forged documents could be slipped into the transport, if the system automatically validated her name before anyone noticed the swap, the entire power structure of Great Britain would be held hostage by her pen. She walked up to the mirror, looking at the sharp, uncompromising reflection staring back at her. "I have sacrificed too much to be thrown to the wolves," she hissed to herself. "I will not lose." She had been setting this trap for months. She had discovered James Hargrove's darkest secret. His son was drowning in millions of dollars of unpayable black market debt. Camilla didn't offer him money. She offered him a choice: complete compliance, or his son in a river. Hargrove cracked within seconds. He handed over everything, the briefcase frequencies, the guard rotations, the blind spots on the highway. Camilla knew she was playing Russian roulette with the crown. If she was caught, it was treason. But if she won, she would rule from the shadows forever. 3 days after the heist was planned, a suffocating fog rolled over Balmoral Castle. Charles and Camilla sat at opposite ends of a long dinner table, the silence between them so thick it was hard to breathe. "Charles," Camilla said out of nowhere, her tone dripping with artificial warmth as she swirled her wine, "are you entirely certain that handing Norfolk to William is safe?" Charles froze. The heavy silver knife slipped from his hand, clattering violently against the porcelain plate. The sound echoed like a gunshot in the dead room. Only 4 people in the entire world knew about the Norfolk transfer. By 4 a.m., a black envelope was sitting on Charles's desk. The contents tore his world apart. Hargrove had just received a multi-million-dollar wire from an untraceable offshore shell company. Embedded in his phone was an encrypted string. The package must change hands on the highway, secure the target by Friday. Charles's hands shook so hard the paper tore. It wasn't just treason, it was the total destruction of his life's trust. He immediately summoned William. When the prince saw his father's face, his blood ran cold. "Father, what has happened?" Charles slid the black dossier across the table. William read it, his eyes widening in horror. "Camilla? This is an act of war." "I wanted to believe otherwise," said Charles, his voice turning into cold iron. "But the trap is set. We are going to catch her in the act." Exactly 1400 the next day, London's M25 motorway was a wall of steel and rain. The Royal Armored Convoy was moving at a precise 60 kilometers per hour, surrounded by security vehicles. Inside the primary transport, the titanium briefcase blinked with a steady green light. None of the guards noticed the massive silver container truck floating 3 cars behind them. Inside Clarence's house, Camilla stood paralyzed at the window, her knuckles white around her encrypted phone. The text arrived: "Convoy in position. Execution in 60 seconds." On the highway, the silver truck suddenly roared, veering violently across 3 lanes of traffic. Tires shrieked, metal slammed into metal as the massive vehicle jackknifed, completely sealing the highway. Total chaos erupted. Within 30 seconds, an operative dressed in full tactical highway gear rushed the royal sedan, pounding on the reinforced glass. "Engine fire in the sector! Exploding hazard! Clear the cargo now!" The lead guard cracked the window just 3 centimeters to flash his badge. That was the only mistake they needed. From the blind spot, a second operative rammed a high-frequency digital override device through the gap. The screen flashed red, then a piercing green. Lock bypassed. In a fraction of a second, the authentic dossier was yanked out and replaced with the forgery. The case snapped shut. Before the guards could even draw their weapons, the operatives vanished into the smoke and the screaming crowd of drivers. The heist took exactly 28 seconds. Camilla's phone buzzed. "The ghost is in the machine. Transfer complete." She let out a breath that sounded like a gasp, pouring herself a straight glass of whiskey, swallowing it in one gulp. She had done it. In less than 72 hours, the legal registry would process the swap, and the keys to the kingdom would belong to her. She immediately texted Hargrove, "Vanish now." But what Camilla didn't know was that a military-grade surveillance van had tracked the entire 28-second heist. Deep beneath Whitehall, inside a top-secret operations room, Sir Michael Reynolds watched the HD playback. "We have the footage," he said into his earpiece. "Alert the king. The Queen has swallowed the wire." At 2000, elite tactical teams blew the doors off a safe house in Croydon, dragging out Marcus Lane, the dark web operative Camilla had hired. Within minutes, he was strapped to a chair in a concrete cell under a single burning bulb. Michael Reynolds stood over him like a specter. "Who bought your services, Marcus?" Lane looked at the guards, sweat pouring into his eyes. "Queen Camilla!" he screamed. "She paid $500,000. I have the digital wallets, the texts, the encryption keys, everything. Don't kill me." 10 a.m., the green room at Buckingham Palace. The heavy oak doors slam shut with a sickening thud. Camilla steps into the room, wearing a stunning emerald green dress, the outfit she knows always softens Charles. She sees the king standing with his back to her, flanked by Michael Reynolds and 3 grim members of the Privy Council. On the table sits the open titanium briefcase. "Charles, darling, what is the meaning of this suspense?" Camilla smiles, stepping forward. Charles doesn't speak. He simply raises his hand. The massive screen on the wall flashes to life. Camilla watches in horror as the high-definition military footage plays out. The highway crash, the lock override, and finally, Marcus Lane's bloody face screaming her name into the camera. "No, no, this is a fabrication," Camilla shrieks, her voice cracking as she stumbles back against the wall. "Charles, they are trying to tear us apart. You know my heart." Charles slowly turns around. His eyes are dead. He drops the forensic ink analysis and the original documents on the table. "Your fingerprints are on the leather. Your signature is on the wire transfers. You didn't just betray me, you targeted the crown." "I wanted a future," she screams, her mask completely slipping as she steps toward him, tears finally breaking through. "Look at what this family does to women who are left behind. I had to protect myself." "You are no longer part of this family," Charles says, his voice cutting through her screams like ice. "Record the judgment. Queen Camilla is stripped of her titles, her funding, her security, and her residences. You have 48 hours to clear your things from Clarence House. If you ever approach a member of this lineage again, you will be moved to a state penitentiary." 2 massive guards grab her by the arms. Camilla struggles, screaming his name, but Charles turns his back, looking out the tall glass windows into the gray London sky. The heavy doors slam shut behind her, cutting off her cries forever. Alone in the vast room, Charles reaches into his pocket and pulls out a small old photo of them from 2005, smiling, happy, before the crown took over. With a steady hand, he tears her face out of the picture, dropping the scrap into the burning fireplace. The news hit the global airwaves like a nuclear bomb. Queen Camilla exiled, stripped of all royal assets after high treason conspiracy. It is the biggest scandal in modern history, one that will permanently alter the destiny of the throne. Later that night, William walks into the dark study, silently locking arms with his father. "The bloodline is secure, William," his voice cracked with an unbearable grief. "Never let the guard down." Outside, a violent winter blizzard buries the palace gates in white, freezing snow, erasing every trace of the woman who tried to steal a kingdom and ended up losing her soul. Did King Charles go too far, or did Camilla get exactly what she deserved? Tell us your theories in the comments below. Smash that like button, share this video with every royal fan you know, and hit subscribe right now for the most explosive updates on the web. Click the next video on your screen right now. The story gets even darker.